So a family member is having a birthday party for their dog Lucy tonight. What do you get a dog for their birthday? I remember last night that I had a pretty decent photo of Lucy. I've never finished a dog portrait in one day, but fortunately I've discovered a new technique for painting. It starts with a watercolor canvas, some Inktense, blocks and pencils, and finish it off with pencils, Prismacolor. I'll show you how I did this picture in less than a day. Okay, so this is the 5x7 watercolor canvas panel from Michaels. It's the Master's Touch brand. The first thing I do is I wet it to get off the film that kind of is on it. So it'll allow the pigment to sink in more quickly. The next thing I do is I put a grid on the canvas so that I can draw the puppy a little bit in advance. Here I'm drawing pretty slowly and trying to get the good shapes in the right place. It's important to do this step, otherwise it'll just look off. I use an app called Notenizer to get the values correct. It can go into black and white, as you saw, and also a Notan, which is black or white. That helps remind me of where to put the outline. So I'm doing this with an Inktense pencil, and this is indigo. And you can see it's not very bright right now, but it will look quite a bit more saturated once I wet it with a water on a brush. See that indigo now comes out really nicely. I'm really careful to keep the wide areas of the white dog intact. And it's just really nice to do this in a quicker way. This really saves time on making sure that my values are correct and really getting to the point where I can start doing the shapes of the dog. I'm using a pretty big brush here so that I can make sure I don't get too detailed at this phase. You can see that I carved out his facial features, and now I'm putting in some of those darker areas that you can see on that Notan app, just to make sure I get the values right of dark versus light. I'm using a really small brush for the eye, however, because I don't want that to spread too much. And I'm going to spread some of this pigment around to kind of keep doing the values. And here you see I'm scrubbing away the grid lines that you can't see very good here. I'm just making sure that all the grid lines that I had drawn with watercolor pencil are gone. And watercolor pencil, unlike the Inktense, lifts very easily and is easy to spread. Here you can see I'm using a white brush pretty aggressively across the whole painting, and most of that Inktense just isn't budging. Once it gets set, it stays put, which is why I like to use it as an underpainting, because my strong shapes can stay put. But I do want some of the darker values, as you can see in that Notan, to stay around. So I'm keeping the top where the sun's hitting the top of the dog pretty bright and white, but the bottom is going to darken up. And here I'm dabbing away before it sets some of those white areas, just to make sure that I can keep those white areas really light. This color is a baked earth. It's kind of a sienna color, but it's called baked earth in Inktense. And I'm putting this in because even though it's a white dog, I want some warmer colors to help bring forward some of the parts of the dog, because I really stick with warm colors come towards the front and cool colors go towards the back. So I'm going to spread these out. Not too worried about details at this point. In fact, I don't worry too much about details at all with these Inktense colors. I'm just looking for general shapes and making sure that the body and the dog becomes more 3D like. I'm using a color called field green, I believe. And I want this on the bottom because it is a warmer green. You'll see in a minute that I do a cooler green, which is a bluish green on the top. The warmer green is going to be on the bottom on the grass that Lucy is actually standing on. And so I'm going to put a light coat of this, and then you'll really see it pop once I wet it. This is a field green, and you can see it kind of approximates further back, almost a sky color, because again, cool colors recede into the background because of the sky and the air reflects blue. So now I'm going to add the red. This was a poppy red, I believe. And I'm using this for the tongue and a very small portion of the eye. But mostly this is for the tongue. I wanted to put some of the red throughout the dog just to kind of pull it all together. This kind of gives it variety in the dog. Some of this is just my desire to keep it somewhat impressionistic. I use this really small brush to make sure I get that tongue pretty tight, and I don't want red to spread all over, especially once I start working on the fur, the coat of the dog. Again, just trying to get basic shapes and get some volume, if you will, of this shape by getting darks and lights. And I'm using a variety of colors, knowing that later I'm going to draw over these colors with Prismacolors, the white colors. This back leg is further back, so I want it to be a darker blue. Here I'm checking the values. Okay, now I'm finally blending this in. This is a indigo color, because I wanted to have a really dark nose and eye. This is really fun to work on this, and I'm really starting to see the dog pop out of the page, and I'm feeling pretty good about the values that I'm achieving. And I'm excited how this might turn out. I was a little nervous about how it would turn out, or if I could pull this off in such a short amount of time. But I can see that it's kind of working in this process of building up values with different colors and really carving out the shape of this dog. I'm getting kind of excited at this point that, hey, this might work out. I haven't drawn too many dogs before. This is maybe the fourth dog I've done. So I'm by no means a pet artist. But I keep reminding myself that shapes are shapes, and I just need to focus on, hey, where's the dark area? Where's the light area? And I'm keeping it loose and dabbing and saying, okay, this is a dark area, this is a light area. Because you just get lost in doing this. And it's really relaxing to just keep thinking and keep doing this. It's really kind of fun to see this happen. I really enjoy doing this painting. And I'm really pleased that it's working out the way it is. Okay, this is where the final look after I did all the Inktense pencils. I think I could stop right here and it would be a great painting. But I love to experiment, so I'm going to keep going. I'm going to use dry Prismacolors to get some more details. Start with a light blue here, and you can see I'm trying to add some of the whiskey hairs off the tail, and kind of frustrated. Oh no, this isn't working as well as I thought it would. It's not popping off of the green grass as good as I thought it would. But this was an experiment, and I wanted to keep going. And I'm a little frustrated right now, but I think I can pull it off, so I'm going to keep trying. This lighter blue is fairly transparent, and it's just not doing as well as I thought it would. So I'm now going to use some white. This white pops out a little bit better, so I'm glad that it's going to save the day where that lighter blue didn't. Now you can kind of see that those wisps of hair are kind of going to work. But I don't think I'm pushing hard enough. I'm just still kind of tentative of what I'm doing. Typically with Prismacolor pencils, colored pencils, you want to start with a light touch and go from there. This you'll see a little later that I have to resort to really pushing quite hard to get what I want. But so far it's trending in the right direction, and I'm truly learning as I go. I'm frustrated at how wispy the hair actually does look on this, and I don't really love what's happening right now. It's kind of frustrating me. Keep moving around the dog to say, okay, well, what areas will take the pencil better? Really exploring and learning as I go. Here I'm using some of the gray because I didn't want to use too wide of a white in that background, because the bright white would tend to come forward, and I want a grayer white in the back, or a bluer, cooler white. Here's where I decided to start using this rubber tipped, they're called color shapers. They're used for a lot of things, and you kept seeing me brushing the residual paint or pigment from the pencil, but this is actually pushing it into the canvas. And I really like how it's spreading and blending. This is an electric eraser, and I'm using it to carve away some of that area that I over darkened for the nose. And it's working pretty good, but it's not erasing the Inktense. This canvas is so durable that it's working out good, and so I just keep working at this and blending and erasing and putting in darks. And then I remembered that one of the best ways to get white is to put dark next to it. So I broke out a darker gray to get some of those darker areas to look darker, so the light areas would look lighter. Now I'm working on the eye again, just really darkening it up in a really precise way. And so I got out the reference photo, and those squares on the right side are exactly an inch. And so that's the scale that I had gridded it out. So what you see on the left should be the size that I need to do on the right, on the portrait. So I'm being careful that I don't get too big, but it's helping me get the scale a little bit better. Now I'm getting that buckle a little bit darker. Now I'm using red for the tongue, and making sure that pops out, but I will use some gray over the red to make sure it has the right amount of shading. And then I'm going to erase the tooth. And you can see that really allowed it to pop back up, because I left it pretty white from the Inktense underpainting. Also want to carve out the silver buckle. So you can see I just go back and forth with various colors, dark and light, just to get the look that I'm after. Again, this is really kind of nice, and I like that the Inktense allowed me to get all the shapes and the general look of the dog. But the Prismacolors, the drier, non-water soluble pencils, allow me to get some really detailed work. And I'm mixing, loose with detail. And obviously those grass, blades of grass are really quite thin. So just putting those in with a warmer green Prismacolor pencil. So I actually did it. I finished in time for the party. I even had time to spray it with the UV varnish for protection. I think the trick was using those Inktense pencils and blocks on that watercolor canvas board. And finishing it up with regular colored pencils was a great way to finish it off without more mess. In the end, I was able to give a cool, unique present to Lucy's family. And I enjoyed the experiment. It was fun.
All right, I hope this art experiment inspired you to explore something in your own art practice. Be sure to watch this next video to get more ideas you can use. And remember, explore art and discover life.